So welcome everyone to the first meeting of the New Year 2015 Planning Commission meeting. Jackie, if you could take the roll call, please.
Yes.
Here.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Here.
Here.
Commissioner C.
Here.
Commissioner Helba.
Here.
Commissioner Olson. Here. Commissioner Carr. Here. Chair Ladder.
Here. So the first topic for tonight is approval of the meeting agenda, and I just have one add for that. I would like to add the PC or Planning Commission annual meeting there for the chair, vice chair, secretary elections. With that, do I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second? It's approved. So the first thing would be then the elections. Is there any particular order we should go with that, Carrie?
I believe traditionally we've opened the floor for nominations for chair
Okay.
and followed by the vice chair and the secretary.
So it is a little earlier maybe than it was in previous years, but the previous chair, Commissioner Staunton, moved on to bigger and better things with the city council. So we all wish him well there.
So I move that we elect Commissioner Platter as chair of the Planning Commission.
Second.
Do we have a vote on that? Other nominations?
You all really want this.
Well, we'll see. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, take a vote. Do we need a roll call vote? No, okay.
All in favor?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Next up is vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair? Commissioner Scheer?
I'll nominate Commissioner Carr.
Second.
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Congratulations. Next up is secretary. Are there any nominations for the secretary position?
I would nominate Commissioner Lee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other nominations?
I would nominate Joanne Olson.
Uh-oh. Any seconds?
Would you like that
Also, I was wondering, can I decline a nomination if I've been nominated?
I believe you can, yes.
Yes? All right. I decline the nomination. And I'd like to nominate Joanne Olson.
Do I have, she
Mine.
nominated you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
To the other nomination, yes. So we have a nomination and a second for Commissioner Olson. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. It's all good.
You don't do anything, secretary. It's a good job.
So next up is the approval of the consent agenda. The only item on the consent agenda is the minutes of the last commission meeting. Jackie, it says November on here. Did we have December meeting minutes out?
Right, they'll be next.
They'll be next time. Gotcha. So are there any changes to those? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
And a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next up is community comment. This is for anyone in the community to come in 3 minutes, make a statement. Only caveat is asking that if something is on the agenda later, that you speak about that at that time versus that. So are there any items that people wish to comment on?
Yes, my name is Jim Groats. I live at 5513 Park Place.
I have
Welcome
a
back.
Edina, pardon?
Welcome back.
Yep, I have a suggestion. Would it be possible, because for example, with City Council, we have town hall meetings, and we don't really have any the equivalent with the Planning Commission. And my suggestion would be to have some sort of a less formal setting where maybe some of the issues that we have before us, some of the problems and issues could be brought up and discussed. We have a lot of intelligent people and sharp people in the city. And but for example, the first one might be, well, you pick out 3 issues like drainage and various other issues that are always seem to come up here, and we can meet in a less formal setting and it'd be publicized, and people could come in and hash it out with the members of the Planning Commission. It's very similar to the town hall meeting that we have at the City Council. So that's just a suggestion I'm offering. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from anyone? That I would make a motion to close the community comment.
So moved.
There's, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So next up is the public hearing portion of our meeting. And 2 items on the agenda tonight, both for variances for homes. And Planner Teague, I believe you'll present both of them tonight.
I will. Let's see. Thank you, Chair Platter, members of the Commission. Our first variance this evening is located at 5533 Oaklawn Avenue. It's located just east of Wooddale. It's the second home from the corner, as shown on the screen. There is an existing home on the property and an existing one-stall garage. It's about a little over 14 feet wide and 20 feet deep. Here's a quick rendering of what the existing single-car garage on the site looks like. As the Commission, this was one of those issues that we talked about when we were looking at the zoning ordinance amendments, and we had made the recommendation to allow just a single-stall garage. That ordinance didn't pass it, so that you need at least a 2-stall garage in Edina.
The ordinance passed the Planning Commission, but it
correct.
Didn't make it through council.
That was the Planning Commission recommendation. That's right. So that the code does require a 2-car garage here, and they're proposing to tear that garage down and build a new one, only just build it slightly larger, be 15 feet wide, so that would be a single-stall garage. So that is the variance. The red line indicated here on the site plan shows required setbacks. 5-foot setback is required for a detached garage. This new structure would meet that setback. This is a look of what the proposed garage would look like. It's designed to match the existing home, which you see on the screen here. So you can see the home has been updated, and it's the garage's turn, essentially, as you look at it here. A couple more renderings of the existing home and the existing garage. So staff believes that in this case the variance criteria is met. Again, the project, staff believes it's reasonable. It does meet all of our setback requirements, building coverage requirements. It's replacing the existing garage just slightly wider. The proposal here is for a 15-foot wide garage, 20 feet deep. But it does qualify as a single-stall garage. But again, essentially replacing the existing. This block is unique. If any of the Commission drove up and down, there's a number of single-stall garages on this block. Up to 6 or 7 on this block. So this isn't out of character in the neighborhood. Many of them are attached to the home, but nonetheless they are single-stall garages in the neighborhood. The practical difficulty here, staff believes, is the existing location of the home. If they were to build a 2-car garage here, it would be about 5 feet from the home, which would block some of the sunlight, and you can see the windows along that north elevation. So there is a little bit of a practical difficulty here in locating a 2-car garage to meet the code. There may be some building code issues if they were to go larger too. The garage potentially would have to be fire rated. There has to be, if it's within 5 feet of the existing building, that would have to be fire rated. But in conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the variance subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in your staff report. With that, I can stand for questions.
Any questions for Planner Teague? Commissioner Carr?
I was just curious if you'd received any comments from any adjacent properties.
I'm not aware of any comments that we've received, either negative or for the project.
Did you have any, and also one other question, did you have any discussions with the owners about, what do they call those, where there's it's a two-car garage, but it's one stall in front of the other stall?
The tandem.
The tandem one, yeah.
I've not had any discussions. That might be a question for the applicant if that's something they have considered here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. So next up, would the applicant like to come forth and tell us about the new garage?
Hi, good evening. My company was working for Brian Bellinger, the owner of the property. And,
Could you state your name and address, please?
my name is Mark Johnson. And thank you. And my company's in Minnetonka, and the address is the property in the pictures is 5533 Oak Lawn.
Okay, thank you.
So with regards to the comments that were made from the staff, on the short access, the garage is 15 feet, a few inches larger.
If you want to show anything if you want to show us the plan or anything, I don't know, Jordan, if we can do an overhead on there too, that might be easiest, just so people can follow along both up here and at home needed.
Okay. So he hit on most of the points already, and the only other item was when the garage was designed for Brian, on the long axis it's actually smaller, and on the short axis it's a little bit larger. And in both cases we're talking about inches, not feet. And then the other item that we were requesting with the single car garage is to build up to the standard setback, which is 5 feet. With regards to a tandem garage, I think that's a viable question. Brian's been in the home for almost 30 years and single, and has no plans in moving or changing his marriage status. So the impact of parking on the street and things like that would not change unless the home ownership changed, which he's building the garage for himself. He doesn't plan on moving. Do you have any comments you'd like to add, Brian? Any questions with regards to the project from a design standpoint, or Brian as the homeowner?
Are there any questions for Mr. Johnson? Commissioner Scheer?
Just for the record, I'm a great fan of two-car garages, mostly because I don't like a lot of miscellaneous equipment sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm noting, and I would like to note for the record, how many feet do you have on the side of the garage door, which I assume could be a storage area?
Let me grab
As far as clearance?
It's probably like 4 feet, 4 to 5 feet.
Would you say that there's going to be enough for any extra storage, or is that just
Yes, that's
getting
actually,
in and out of a car?
That's actually designed for two reasons. Having more space on the left.
Mm-hmm.
One, the driver gets out on that side, of course. And then the other is to create more storage. So we're trying to keep the garage door closer to the one side, which would be the passenger in the vehicle as opposed to the driver. So yes, that's creating more storage.
And I would say I like the design and the detailing on it very much. It's very much in keeping with the architecture of the main property, and I think it's very attractive.
Thank you. That obviously is a goal to have it complement the existing home.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Don't go too far. Maybe some other ones will come up. Thank you. As this is a public hearing, anyone who may have some comments, you're welcome to come forth and give us your thoughts. About a 3-minute time limit if you want to step to either podium. Don't all rush up. Seeing no one, I would take a motion to close the public hearing. Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So I'll bring it back to the commission at this point. Are there any comments, questions, motions to be had? Commissioner Rolls.
Well, I would just, I would agree with my fellow commissioner that I think that the design of the garage is very nice, and it's great to see that level of care taken in the redesign or rebuilding of that structure. I have had some qualm with requiring a two-car garage, and I do understand that there's a possibility to do tandem. I think overall, though, there is an issue of, and again, it's for the homeowner to decide, but the resale value, obviously everyone is going to be looking for a two-car garage in the future. I think this is a wonderful way to treat it now, but potentially we may be facing this further down the road someday when the home is going to be sold, that someone is going to try to attempt to attach this garage or have to redo it. So it's just a fact, but I just wanted to note that. I feel that it's appropriate, though, because I would like to see, in fact, that a single-car garage be permitted, as a lot of automobile ownership, as they say, is declining, and in fact of trying to encourage and increase alternative modes of transportation. It seems to make sense. So that's just what I think. Thanks.
Commissioner Carr.
I would also be in support of the variance for the reasons stated, but also I do think one important element is the fact that it really does fit in with the character of the neighborhood, which is important. There's a number of one-car garages, or at least the appearance of one-car garages, so I think that's important.
Yeah, agreed with that. I believe I counted 7 on that block, roughly, that were one car. So, other comments, discussion, motions?
I would move approval of the variance with the conditions and the staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Congrats. Go forth and build.
Our next variance request is located at 4505 Nancy Lane. Whoops. There we go. It's located just south of the Valley View Wooddale commercial area, just off Wooddale Avenue on Nancy Lane. You can see it's a small cul-de-sac, just a few Rambler-style homes on the block. This is a survey of the existing property. You can see the existing Rambler on the property. Here's a photograph of the existing home. This is the existing home in the middle, and gives you an example of a couple of the Ramblers on that block. So what the applicant is proposing to do here is remodel and expand that existing Rambler, essentially pop the top, do a second-story addition, and then a couple of small additions off the front, and to expand the garage into a 2-stall garage. The areas highlighted in yellow indicate the expansion area, the expansion of the footprint. This is a front porch area here in front, and then the expansion this way to the side is for the 2-car garage. This graphic here indicates the required setbacks. It's this kind of odd-shaped area here. A 50-foot setback is required to the pond located on the south side of the property, and the front setback is the average of the two homes on either side, and that comes to 30.4 feet. The existing home is 29.6 feet, so just slightly encroaches into the required setback. The proposed addition here would meet the side yard setback requirement. So the variances are for the second story, the setback to the pond, the setback to Nancy Lane, that small encroachment along here. The front porch is a little over 200 square feet in size. We allow a 80 square foot expansion into the required setback, so there's a variance for that oversized porch. And then again, that the second story addition above. So this graphic indicates it's a floor plan for the first floor. There is an overhang on the second floor, and we'll take a look at a slide in a minute that shows that encroachment. And again, the front porch. And look at the two-car garage and the expansion there. So this is the second story. You can see there's 3 bedrooms up. So this expansion here into the setback provides a little more area for the bathroom and one of the bedrooms. This highlights that little bump out area above the porch. So with that, staff believes that the variance criteria is met in this case. The use is reasonable. They're utilizing that existing footprint and expanding slightly. Again, it's reasonably sized for the neighborhood, about 1.5 stories, as we saw, or 1.5 stories to 2 stories. Again, using the existing footprint. The practical difficulty in this case is the restricted setbacks given the pond to the south and the setback, the average setback of the 2 homes on either side, and just the location of the existing structure that's non-conforming. Essentially difficult to do anything on this property without a variance. The 2-stall garage is reasonable for the property. And so with that, staff would recommend approval of these variances, again, subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in your staff report. And with that, I can stand for questions.
Thanks, Carrie. Any questions for staff?
I just have a quick one. So, Carrie, can you just explain what is existing with the garage and what's being proposed for that, where it's going closer to the pond?
Let's see. So this highlights the garage, and I may ask for some help from the applicant.
Sure, okay.
As far as that existing garage, I believe it would go into this area here. So it's partially an expansion of the home,
Okay.
and then an extension.
Okay.
And for the pond, you can see the 50-foot setback that's required here. So the existing home is non-conforming, and that it doesn't meet the setback. So the whole second story within this area here requires a variance as well.
So there's also increase to the foundation or the first floor. Is there any? Are we going closer to the pond, or is it just going above an existing?
The expansion would be this yellow area here.
And that's going above an existing.
That's an expansion. That's an expansion to the house, and that goes up as well.
Okay.
Let's see. I think they're rendering. You can kind of see there's the second story space.
Sure.
Mark Seberg. I'm a property owner at 4505 Nancy Lane. There's nothing that's going any closer to the pond.
Okay.
So it's the existing structure is already 25 feet from the pond, so that's the reason for the variance requirement or request.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff? We'll get to you in 1 second. Sure. Commissioner Carr.
Any, just a question, any comments from neighbors?
I have not heard comments, but I believe we have a few neighbors in the audience tonight.
Okay, all right. Well, we can hear from them, later, but I was just curious if you personally had heard anything, so thank you.
There's nothing written that came in with our
Correct.
packets, right? Okay. Thanks. Anything else for Carrie? Thanks. If the applicant wants to come forth now and give us any background or any further information, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. Again, it's Mark Seberg, property owner at 4505 Nancy Lane. It's my wife Meredith, and overall, nothing major to add. Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to present our requests, and again, would reiterate what Mr. Teague was saying in regards to feel that our requests are both reasonable with the layout of the proposed home and also help us overcome some extraordinary circumstances given the current layout of the lot and where the existing home falls on the property line. So nothing really to add to that, but thank you again.
Any questions for the applicants? Commissioner Lee.
I just had a few questions about the overall design. I think it's very interesting and can totally understand the need to renovate and update this home for your family. So it sounds like an interesting project. Your existing home is a Rambler style right now, and your two neighbors are also Ramblers. So this is now actually a change from a building typology. So you're going more for a two-story home, more of a farmhouse, colonial look. Your current floor-to-ceiling height right now on the, I'm guessing is standard, probably 8 feet?
Yes,
Is
correct.
the new home going to be higher on that first floor level? What are your floor-to-floor ceiling heights?
The first floor, will basically remain the same. There is can I take control of try to bring up the plans?
Yeah, maybe take the...
What I'm hoping to
Hang
show
on,
is
we're not there yet.
There's a vaulted aspect to it, and so
There we go.
there we go. So if you look at these windows here, this is all overlooks the main floor. So if you were to look through these windows from the outside, you'd be looking down.
It's a two-story space, yeah.
Right, exactly. But the remainder over on below the addition, below the second story, will remain the same height.
Okay, so you're basically adhering to the same first floor level, probably 8-foot ceiling height, and similar, duplicating that on the second story.
Yes, correct.
My reason for asking is that obviously the typology of a Rambler is very low slung and linear, horizontal, whereas this tends to go up. And with that contrast, I just was just curious as to how much height that was. I realize that you're staying within the zoning, which permits a certain overall height, and that there was no conflict there. I just kind of wanted to sort of see it in relation and understand it in relation to your neighbors. So, let's see here. What is the additional square footage that you're hoping to add to this house over what you have? Interior square footage.
Yeah, I believe it's about 1,300 square feet. I'm looking to my contractor who is here as well, but the additional to what is there currently.
Okay, thank you.
Let's have a quick. So you're essentially tearing off the whole roof on this, right, and redoing that.
Yes,
the whole
correct.
piece. So the whole roof line is going up for the entire house.
Right.
Some will be one level, or actually some will be two-level space, right? as you
Right.
go up. Okay, I just want to check that. And then Carrie, question for you I forgot to ask. So when this was originally built, I don't know exactly, but do you remember what setback? I think we talked about this before. What were typical body of water setbacks? Would they've been probably 25 feet back when all these were built? I know, around that area, looks like all of them are about the same distance back from the from the lake there. Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thanks. Maybe
Thank you.
some more will come up. Again, public hearing, if anyone wants to come forth at this time, come to one of the microphones and you get about 3 minutes, or maybe probably the podiums work the best.
Okay.
Give us your name, address.
It's James Weston. My address is 4501 Garrison Lane, so just a block over, about 2 houses behind them. But I've been there 13 years. But I like the design that they have. I think it is very aesthetically pleasing. So I'm in approval of what they plan to do, and we probably will also do something in the near future to expand, because we have an expanding family. I've got a wife with a couple kids, and so we probably will also do the same to our house in some regard, whether it be adding up or making an addition. So in the overall scheme of the neighborhood, I think that's where the neighborhood is going to be going. We have a lot of families in the neighborhood that are moving in and liking a little bit bigger home than just the traditional ramblers that you see there. And not necessarily on Nancy Lane, but Garrison Lane, which is the street behind it. There's a lot of very small cottages that might be 1,000 feet or less that are original homeowners, and a lot of them are also getting up in the age that they will probably be selling soon too. So kind of feel that the neighborhood will be altering its look, so it won't be just ramblers for very much longer, including our house, because our house actually looks just like the original Rambler house, but we will be changing that soon too. So I think that's it.
All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to comment?
Hello, Nancy Parker, 4509 Nancy Lane. We're the neighbors just to the west, and we're happy to see a new family move into the neighborhood, and we're excited for them and totally understand the need for renovation. However, when I see this picture, if you're going to make them go through the exercise of showing what the house is going to look like when it's redone, I don't think this is doing it justice, and I actually think it's fairly misleading. But that was all I wanted to say.
In what sense?
Oh, well, I don't think it's showing the height and the comparison to the other homes. That I think if you really saw what it looked like, it would not fit in like it looks like it fits in here.
Okay, gotcha.
So you don't think it's to scale? No, it's definitely not to scale. And even like where it's close to the homes. And also, I didn't hear him say anything about the variance to the west, which I think they also are requesting.
Is there a variance to the west? Seems there is, I think, every other direction.
It would be for this, yes, for the second story addition. A variance would be needed for that side. That's correct.
Yeah, I only heard him mention the front and the pond.
Right.
So I just wanted that to
Yeah,
be.
the front of the pond and the garage I know you mentioned. So.
Because it runs the length. That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Just hang on, we'll just wait to see if there are any other comments out there. Okay, yeah, if you want to come back.
I just wanted to clarify that there is not a variance request for the garage. So that expansion, again, does not go closer to the pond. It also is within the setback requirement on the west side property line. So there is no variance request there. There's a total of 4 variance requests. It's the backyard to be closer than 50 feet to the pond. There's the front setback to the Nancy Lane property line. There's the size of the front porch that's being added. And then to Nancy's point, there is the west side variance as well. Basically because of the additional height that we're going up, that's requiring an additional setback as well. So those 4 variances. Thank you.
Carrie, wouldn't the garage need a variance though, since it's in the wetland or the lake setback, isn't it? That little chunk that's in the yellow there, where it says 7, I believe, on the plans. Maybe just go through them again, just to clarify.
Variance is needed for this back portion right in here.
Where the garage is going, right?
where the garage is going to the pond.
Which square?
It squares off with the existing house, correct.
Right,
This
because
red
the-
line depicts the required setback, so it's this small area in here.
So the existing is non-conforming as of right now,
Yes,
correct?
the house isn't getting any closer to the pond, it's just above the existing structure.
And
And those
maybe
other
just-
variances that we were
Maybe just
talking...
point out the other ones, just so we are
Yes, the ones
clear.
that we were talking about, the side yard, are on this west side right here for going, again, above the existing structure. So it's within this area here. The other setback is for the encroachment above 80 square feet for the porch in this location here. And the second story addition, just this small sliver in the front as well. So essentially we've got setback variances to the front, to the west side, and to the pond, and for the size of that porch that encroaches into the setback.
Okay, thank you.
But just to reiterate, the front and the pond, with regard to the garage, are being kept consistent with existing lines of the house
Yes, that's correct.
as it sits today. All right.
Thank you. One thing we need to do is close the public hearing before we go any
So
further.
moved.
Seconds?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So right now, bring it back up to the commission. Any comments, discussion we would have on this? I just say a lot of variances here, but it is a rebuild versus a tear down in this case. Commissioner Carr.
I would support approving it. There's very minor changes. They're staying with basically the configuration of the home as it is, just building up. And the only thing I wanted to ask is, Planner Teague, was there any look at soil erosion issues or things of that nature?
Yeah, engineering didn't have major concerns on this one, essentially using the same footprint. But there was no major concerns from engineering department.
All right, thank you.
And they're below the allowed lot coverage, right? That wasn't a variance
Correct.
here?
That's
Yeah,
right.
Okay. Any other comments? Commissioner Lee?
I did want to comment that, again, back to the Rambler, and I do realize that obviously a lot of our areas of Edina are undergoing change, and the typology of the Rambler is something that some people are very wedded to and may in fact remain, and other areas are completely changing character. So it's difficult to say whether this house really matches the character or should even match the whether or not it should match the character of the area. I think the character of the area is rather undefined. But one thing that I am certain about is that the height is going to be significant on this house. It is going from a single-story structure to a two-story structure, and I agree that the rendering is misleading. I think that there's something off about the scale. It reads almost the same height as a one-story building of the neighbors to either side of it, and it is going to be literally double the height, even staying conservatively at 8-foot ceiling heights on the first floor level and the second floor level. But given the fact that, for the reasons that the variances are being requested, I can find no issue with any of those. I just want to note that the height differential is going to be significant, and it is not really reflected in this rendering. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? Your comments? Commissioner Scheer.
I would move approval of the variances as requested and enumerated in the staff report and subject to the conditions that the staff report enumerates.
Is there a second? Second. So we have a motion and a second. Any other with that? So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So the motion passes as noted, subject to staff conditions. So congratulations. That our public hearings are done. Next up, reports and recommendations is the tree preservation ordinance, and this has been in here a lot over the past year. So I know there's a lot of discussion last time. Just for the record, Carrie, is this would this be a public hearing on it if needed, or I mean,
It's not a public
It's
hearing.
not a public
You've
hearing?
opened
Okay.
and closed that. Correct.
Gotcha. So I would guess I would leave it to you to introduce it at this point, maybe highlight the changes. We could go through it. I think the goal after this, if it goes forth, would be to go to is it February 6th, I think, council meeting, correct?
I believe it's February 3rd.
February
Let me
3rd.
get an exact date here, so I have that right. February 3rd, it's scheduled for public hearing with the City Council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. Just to quickly go through some of the changes, there were several of them at your last meeting, and so we decided to incorporate them in the ordinance and bring it back to you. So essentially, what the ordinance in front of you, it makes it more clear that this does apply to subdivisions. On the definition of critical root zone on page 2, there's some slight wording change there. I believe that was recommended by the city attorney. If the critical root zone must be disturbed for construction or construction activity, a plan for the disturbance shall be submitted subject to review and approval of the city forester to minimize the damage. That's to address that issue if there's just no way to avoid, whether it's construction being construction traffic accessing the site where it just has to get within that critical root zone. This provides an out where the city forester would approve some type of a plan that's submitted by the builder. So that change has been added. There was a suggestion for a definition for diameter at breast height, where we're measuring the height. So that definition has been added, and that definition is, the way it reads in front of you is the diameter at breast height, or DBH, shall be measured at a height of 1.4 meters. We had a suggestion come in that we change that to feet, as that's a little more user-friendly. So that would be 4.6 feet. So I might recommend that change to the commission as well.
Hey, Carrie, I just want to go back to the critical root zone you addressed there. So there's at least two comments that I recall talking about that, right? And then I just want to say for the record, the goal of this is not that you don't allow construction there. It's if you do it, here's what you need to do, right? I mean, do we believe that's covered now? You know, I don't want people removing a tree because they say, well, there's no way we can protect it, right?
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this provides some leeway, because if we were to say a no-touch within that critical root zone, it might render a site unbuildable.
Right. Yeah, that's rather take the chance to try and save it.
To save
Gotcha.
the tree rather than have it
Okay,
removed.
thanks.
Correct. Let's see, under protected tree and the types that would be replaced, we added that deciduous or coniferous, similar type tree. There was some discussion on that the last time around. And also the planting of replacement trees shall be verified at the time of final inspection for the building permit. We had the discussion the last time. It's implied, but it wasn't specifically stated in the ordinance, so we've now included that. Let's see.
Maybe it's an obvious question, but it says in here the acceptable replacement species on file with the city. Is that on file now, or is that what are we?
Yeah, we would work with the forester to come up with that list.
Okay. I know at one time we listed species in here, but didn't seem like that had a lot of support. So
we have also included this is in regard to primarily subdivisions, where we talk about where trees can be removed without mitigation in areas of installation of public infrastructure improvements, including roadways, stormwater retention areas, and utilities. So that's an additional add. And lastly, and the reason that there's a new ordinance that's been handed out in front of you this evening, and this again was a recommendation from the city attorney, in that we have some provisions in there that talk about criteria that can be considered for a subdivision when a variance is requested. That language was within our subdivision ordinance. It's been moved into the zoning ordinance. So there's no language changes, it's just a relocation of those standards. So that concludes the changes from the last time. And we do have the city attorney here with us this evening. And that there was some talk the last
Thank you
time
for
about
coming, by the way.
enforcement of the ordinance. So we welcome Roger to answer any questions that you might have in regard to enforcement of this ordinance.
Commissioner Schroeder.
I don't have any questions for Roger just yet, but if we look at the definition of a critical root zone, when we tell people how the 15-foot is dimensioned or is arrived at, I think it should be 10.5 times 1.5 equals 15, not minus 15. And then, again, this is a math question, but if you go down to 4B, can someone tell me what the replacements would be if we only had 2 required replacements? What could they be? Yeah.
You mentioned that last time.
Yeah, you can't do it. So I think we should just strike that. I mean, I don't know how, I mean, if there was 40 trees being removed, it'd be easy, but if you, most of these residential lots, we're not removing a whole lot of trees, hopefully.
It's just a couple, you're right.
Yeah.
This is probably more intended if you're more under a landscape
Or,
ordinance maybe
or
or
the
something.
subdivision,
For a
which we
subdivision
don't have a
where-
whole lot of subdivisions here, but a subdivision would require a landscape plan, and we could probably enforce this a little differently. And the only other question I have, and I think this is one we would want to direct back to the city forester, when we talk about decompaction under number 8, we say 1-inch holes 2 inches deep. If we're really looking at decompaction for trees that have been impacted, I think we may have to go deeper than 2 inches. That's kind of a normal aeration for lawns and not for trees. But if we could just verify that with our city forester.
Yeah, and this we did. You recall a few
12
drafts
inches
back,
before.
we had
That's what I
18
think.
inches, and
Or
so this
18, excuse me.
2-inch number is the recommendation from our forester.
Okay. I'm not sure what we get with 2 inches of aeration. The issue is the compaction doesn't happen just in the top 2 inches. The compaction will happen through the root
Could be a
zone, which is
foot.
typically in the top 12 to 18 inches of the soil. So if that's truly the recommendation, I'm not going to argue it here. I don't think it's the right direction to go.
It was, but I can certainly
Yeah, could you maybe
revisit that
circle
with him
back
again.
and just talk through that again? Commissioner Lee, did you have something? Or, I'm sorry, were you done, Commissioner Schroeder?
All right, so yes, my question has to do with the enforcement. I guess that was what jumped out at me. It's 4F. So we've added that planting of replacement trees shall be verified at the time of final inspection for the building permit. What is that? How are we going to do that? What is the process implied here?
The city forester would perform an inspection at the time of when a home is ready to be finalized. Typically, one of the building officials would send out an email to various staff. Do you have any issues with this site? Kind of a heads up that there's going to be a final on that site. So, in all likelihood, it would be the city forester that would inspect.
So
that.
the forester would be tracking as to which projects had replacement trees, and then would be looking for that notification to come forth and recognize that's the home that has some replacement trees, so I better get out there.
Yeah, they would verify the plan that was submitted as part of the building plan that they've reviewed. So they'd have some familiarity with it.
Is
in
that
that
like a
initial review.
checkoff or something that they have on a plan, or how is that? Do they submit a memo, or?
Well, this will be all new. This will be a new ordinance for us to enforce, and that's part of staff's concern here. Is this is added responsibilities to the city forester. Right now it's a part-time position, and it would likely have to become full-time. to take on these additional responsibilities.
So I think the process is important. Obviously, we can put that in there, but if there's no steps in place to assure that, I think as a homeowner, if I did the replacement, I'm not sure I would know at what point I'd have to raise my hand and say, hey, make sure you note that I got my replacement trees in, or vice versa. If I didn't do it, am I obligated to note that to anyone? And because there's really nothing I have to fill out. So that would be my only comment. Concern
That is a
about
concern of staff, is just enforcement of the whole ordinance.
Okay.
Well, that would be on the plan, right? So as whomever was doing the final inspection, you'd see that along with this retaining wall or whatever, that this tree was replaced, right? So wouldn't that be just part of the overall inspection at the end?
Yeah, that could be
I mean, I don't know if we could argue either way, but I don't know if it would necessarily be the forester either. If someone could check that, hey, there's 2 trees planted as part of their final CO inspection.
right.
You know,
Just check to make
I
sure
don't know if it's
that
necessarily
there.
the forester, but I mean, just like you're inspecting for anything else on the site, right?
I think what I'm getting at is that probably it could be more clear to put sort of that responsibility on the homeowner. You know, at the time that when the time comes that you need that final inspection, here's the checkoff list, and literally there's a box. Were there any replacement trees? You have to check, and then from there, that's where the city would be notified, rather than the city having to remember or track, or is that the house that has replacement trees, or does that involve our forester or not? So trying to put it more on the side of the homeowner to drive that process so that there's not so much tracking that has to be done on the city side, but that the homeowner starts that process and initiates it, gets that ball rolling.
But the homeowner may forget or may not decide to bring it to the city's attention. That's why it's like any building inspection, any requirement. We go out and verify that the requirements are...
Right. Obviously, that part wouldn't change, but I'm just thinking, how do we get to the point where, in fact, it can be verified? You put it on the homeowner to actually have to, okay, if you're requesting a final inspection now, here's the checklist. You got to check off the things that you were required to do.
We can give the homeowner a checklist to make, but we have to verify.
Right. And it's only as good as, as they're willing to claim, but at least that would start the process. It would flag it for you without anyone on the city side having to do anything to track it. It's
But
like,
we would have to
there's
prepare
trees.
the checklist and give it to them with
Yes.
that in there. So we'd have already done the work anyway.
Yeah, well, it's just a general checklist, so it's the same checklist for everybody, but they'll be checking different things on those boxes. So some might have replacement trees, some might not check that box.
We do have a building permit checklist now as part of a building permit application. This is something we could add to it.
Okay, so that probably would be the process, yeah.
Because I think that that's checked now before we issue the permit, and I'm assuming it's probably used at the end to verify everything was built correctly, right? So it's a good suggestion. Commissioner Scheer.
I guess this is an enforcement question. If we don't issue a certificate of occupancy unless all of our code requirements and building requirements, et cetera, are met, would not having complied with this portion of the building requirements be a reason for denying a certificate of occupancy?
Yes, but depending on the circumstances and the time of year, you finish building in January.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about trees. I got some, but I don't know
Probably
much
not
about
planting
them.
a lot in January.
I don't think
though.
you're going to be planting trees in January. So what we would do in those circumstances, and we deal with these now, you would give it a temporary CO and say you got to plant them whenever it is in May, depending on how the winter goes.
It probably
And then
happens
this
all the
is-
time with landscaping right now anyway.
And then that's going to require that the forester or somebody else go back and check to be
Yeah.
sure it happened in May.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
Commissioner Carr.
I just have a few comments about the ordinance itself. In the very first sentence, this ordinance applies to all demolition permits, subdivisions, building permit applications, etc. It's not to subdivisions, it's to subdivision applications. Because it wouldn't apply to the existing subdivisions. In one, purpose, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, the goal of this section is to preserve as much as practical Edina's high-value trees. I think there's a word missing there. As much as practical, I think, of Edina's high-value trees. The sentence just didn't read well. At least didn't make sense to me.
Would you just strike as much as practical?
I would, yes.
Yeah, I
That's
would.
an easier way of doing it.
Yeah,
I would.
It's a little more
It's more straightforward, readable. When you get to 1E, all these A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all are protect, preserve, improve. And here we have protect the environment through these various methods by filtering, etc., increasing. I would just, instead of saying prevent and reduce erosion, I would say preventing and reducing erosion. Just a grammatical note to be consistent. G, I had some questions about this, and this is something new, and maybe you can give me some background on this. To maintain buffers between similar land uses, and then, first of all, I wonder if it should be to maintain existing buffers, which is exactly what we're talking about. But I don't believe the purpose of the ordinance is to establish buffers, because we're not requiring people to plant trees. We're only preserving and protecting trees that are being removed because of a demolition or building permit application. So I would strike the rest of that. And again, I'm not sure why we need this necessarily, but if we keep the concept, I would just say maintain existing buffers between land uses or between adjoining properties. I don't know if there's any discussion on that item. Stop me if you have some questions or comments.
I kind of agree that I don't really see what the
I've been agreeing so
necessity
far,
is
so.
of having G.
I don't think we need G. I don't know where it came from, but I don't think it's necessary. Unless we have some...
No, I'm fine with that. When you're done with G, can you go back to E? I'm not clear what you're recommending in E.
Okay, E.
Yeah, there was a grammatical
just a minor grammatical
suggestion.
change. Instead of saying prevent and reduce erosion, I'm saying preventing and reducing erosion. All the other phrases start
To be
out
consistent.
with ing.
Yes, thank you.
No. Okay, then the next comment is on 3. It starts out, demolition and building permit applications must include a tree inventory plan. I think we have to say demolition, subdivision, and building permit applications. We need to add the concept of subdivisions there. Yeah, it's applications is there already. So I think you can say demolition, subdivision, and building permit applications.
I would just suggest applications and taking it out, the others, because all this applies to all those things.
Just say
That's
applications must include.
It
Oh,
already
that's certainly
states it in
simpler.
the first part, right?
That's fine, yeah, that's good. Okay, then my next one is, the one that we were just talking about, F, it's on page 3, where we're talking about the planting of replacement trees shall be verified at the time of final inspection for the building permit. Well, first of all, my question was who's going to verify it? Do we need to state that, whether it's the city forester or the building inspector? But isn't it more than just the planting of replacement trees? Don't we want the final inspection to also verify that there has been aeration in areas that have been compacted, because that was one of the requirements, and that's done at the conclusion of construction? And don't we also want to verify compliance with the tree inventory plan? Because the applicants have to submit a tree inventory plan which shows which trees are to be preserved, which ones are to be removed, and which ones are to be replaced. So at the end of the construction, you should verify that, in fact, the tree inventory plan was followed. It's like a blueprint. Just like for the building itself, you would verify that the blueprint was followed.
Could I offer a recommendation based on that? I
Yes.
think those are all excellent. We could just state verification of the, how do we word that? Of the tree protection plan, because that would include the aeration as well.
Yes, and do we have a name for that? I thought it was the tree inventory plan.
Yeah, under number 3.
The approved tree inventory plan. Well, but what I wanted to do was, first of all, make it broader in scope, because it's not just replacement trees. And then the question is whether or not that's the appropriate place to put that, and whether it should have its own separate number, because it's at the end of the process and it's an inspection process. On 5C, we're talking about protected trees can be removed without mitigation in certain areas. We talk about 10-foot radius of building pads, 5-foot radius of driveways, and then we talk about in areas of installation of public infrastructure. Should we not also use the same wording as we did in A, which would say including and within a 10-foot radius of public infrastructure improvements? I don't know, I throw that out. Right now it would be only and not, because first of all, I'm not sure what the area, the reason I question this is I'm not sure what is meant by areas of installation. Maybe it should read, including and within 10 feet, within a 10-foot radius of any installed public infrastructure improvements. So you've got the public roadway, and then the question is whether you would also give another 10-foot or 5-foot radius off the road. That would particularly apply in a subdivision.
So would that require the city to replace the trees then?
I think so.
I'm just, right? I mean, that's
on city property.
that's who would be doing this work, right?
This was a new item. Well, was this highlighted because it was a new one?
That's right.
Yeah, that was brought up from I forget who brought that up last time, but it was a comment for that.
But they'd be removed without mitigation, so there's no replacement, if I'm reading that.
That's right, there's no
Correct.
mitigation required.
Right, and
but I just thought we should define
there'd be
what
a
the area of
distance.
installation meant. I think it means the roadway itself and a radius outside of the roadway. So I think that needs to be tightened up. And then I didn't know if you were asking for, everything else I thought was great, and I didn't know if you were asking for any comments on the other ordinance that you brought forward, which had to do with subdivision variances. But on the page 5 at the top, which is A3, and these are some of the reasons why a variance could be granted. It says the variance is to correct inequities resulting from an extreme physical hardship, such as topography. And then there was a very strange insertion here, which I didn't understand. Or inadequate access to direct sunlight for solar energy systems. This seems very specific. Someone's, has a very specific interest here. And I'm just wondering if that can't be covered by 5 in C down below, where the variance, the Planning Commission, the City Council may consider certain criteria, and at 5 it says, the impact of the proposed plat or subdivision and proposed development on the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. Wouldn't light and access to light come within that criteria?
If I can respond, this language is taken directly out of the statute. The statute specifically provides that you have to consider inadequate access to direct sunlight for solar energy systems in considering a variance. That's a statutory requirement.
Oh, that's a statutory requirement. Okay, so that's where that comes from. So that's just another example, and then you've said et cetera.
I'll take out et cetera.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Scheer.
So as a follow-up to that, so let's think of the situation. So if someone's putting in an energy system, a solar energy system, that would be a reason for granting a variance to remove more trees?
This has more, this doesn't just deal with trees, this is
Right.
broader than that.
But it would be.
It'd be consideration for taking out trees, yes. You wouldn't necessarily have to approve it, but yes. By statute, you have to consider that as
With no matter what you're doing, right?
yeah,
If
the
it's a
statute
variance, right?
requires it.
Interesting. Thank you.
Somebody must have gotten that in there.
No, that's in the statute. It's been there for as long as I can remember.
We learned something new.
There's been a solar advocate in there somewhere, huh? No, not too many.
Well, I work in quite a few places, and I've never seen one, but it could happen. The statute says you could grant it for that purpose.
Are there any other comments? Carrie, I'm assuming you're taking good notes here, right?
Yes, I think
I just have a comment. I just have a comment in the comments. I don't. Just my humble opinion here, but I didn't see anything that would cause us to bring this back. Is that would that be a fair statement? Well, I'm not tired of reviewing it, but I'd also like it to go forth. So.
I think between Roger and I, we've caught him.
Yeah, I think a lot of mainly grammatical and some other things.
Yeah, and let me know if you have any questions about the specifics.
This isn't about the terminology in here, but I thought that we had discussed that we were going to be getting a full-time then forester to kind of, support with these additional requirements, or what's the status of that?
Well, that'll be a decision that the city council has to make. Right now, the forester it's a part-time position. I think there's a willingness there to go full-time on his part and his successors. So that'll be a decision that the city council has to make.
Right, so how is that, I mean, I know that you've made that comment several times that, you kind of are concerned about the enforcement of this. So how does that, get passed on as kind of a request or to see if it is
When the
viable?
city, yeah, good question. When the city council considers this ordinance,
You'll bring that up?
Yep, they will discuss that, similar to what they did the last time they reviewed this.
Okay.
And there seemed to be, we talked about it at the work session as well. They didn't commit to anything, but there seemed to be a willingness to support what we're talking about here.
Yeah, they didn't say no at the time. So I
It's
thought
still
that
an
was,
open
it
issue.
was, well, maybe an issue, but at least it wasn't stopped in its tracks, if you will. Commissioner Carr, no more comments.
So then is the next step that it goes to the city council?
Yes, the public hearing has already been scheduled for March 3rd. No, February 3rd. I'm sorry,
3rd,
February
right.
3rd.
Well, I think that we've made good progress, though, on the ordinance, and it was good to get feedback from the city council, and it's improved. Actually, it's improved since when we first drafted the original ordinance, so I think it was a good process.
Agreed. Yes.
Would we ever make a recommendation as the planning commission that we bring the forester up to full-time? Since we're already doing all these kinds of edits, but just more formally get that recorded?
You sure can.
All right.
You can.
I don't know if we have to take a vote on that one, but that's what I think seems to, everything sort of justifies it, and we're going in that direction. So.
Probably as part of the comments, maybe. I don't know if we necessarily need to vote on it either, but
It'll be captured in the
part of
minutes.
captured in the meeting minutes.
Okay.
And of course, it may not be that you have to hire a full-time forester. They obviously can do some outsourcing, but at least to make those resources available in order to enforce the ordinance.
Yeah, and that's been talked about as well as part-time help in the summertime. Yeah,
That's
so
probably when the bulk of it's going to be
certainly-
anyway, right?
Right.
Yeah. Assuming we need to take a vote on this at this point, right? So I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the ordinance in its current form as amended informally here during the discussion, with the recommendation that the City Council also at least consider the needed resources to support enforcement of the ordinance.
Second.
Got a motion and seconded. Any further discussion?
Can I just say, are we recommending approval? We're not actually approving this.
We're recommending.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, it's passed on to council now.
That includes
For the
going
second
to-
time, right?
Correct, yes. Just for clarification, that includes the going from meters to feet, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thanks everyone for your, and everyone in the audience for your, everyone that's watching that's made comments, so appreciate those, and hopefully the council agrees with us in a couple weeks. All right, so working down on the meeting. So the next step is correspondence and petitions. I know, Carrie, looks like we have a calendar in front of us. Is that right?
Yes, hopefully it is all accurate. It is accurate this time.
Yeah, there's a bad one floating out there, right?
Yes.
Wrong weeks. I just had one comment on this, and I don't know if we need to take any action right now, but kind of as we've done for the previous years, November and December, both those fall in holiday weeks. So the suggestion that I would have is to, whenever we do that, or plan on not having those meetings, and if we need to, something comes up, we can if we've done it before, we've actually made a longer meeting in those months to cover things if needed. So I don't know if there's any comments or suggestions on those things, and a couple of us sitting here tonight have no worries about that, but the rest of us do.
It seems like in November, we could just move it to the 18th. Otherwise, there'd be no meeting in November if we end up not meeting on the 25th.
It looks like it's on the 12th. It's been moved already.
Oh. Okay. So we have one meeting on the 12th
Yeah,
and
so-
a second one on the 25th, but that could potentially be just canceled. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. So that's a Thursday.
That's a good point. So I don't,
Thursday?
just a quick glance, I don't see any other ones that are not Wednesdays. So that looks like the only Thursday in there. Unless anyone else noticed anything. Any updates for the from the council, Carrie, that comes to mind? I think it was a pretty short meeting, I think.
Yeah, we haven't had too many planning items, other than just to update you on the 7200 France project. As you recall, the council did approve that project, but it was contingent on obtaining access onto France Avenue for both the retail and the residential portion of it. And staff's initial conversations with county staff, they were saying no access on France. It should all come off 72nd. The council has been holding firm to their condition that they had suggested on requiring access off France. Staff has had some subsequent meetings with the county staff, and they have agreed to allow access onto France in a right-in, right-out scenario, similar to the Byerly's across the street. So it looks as that'll go to the city council next week for their consideration for approval of the comp plan amendments and the preliminary rezoning with those conditions on access. So a little update there. That this is still the first step in that process. So the Planning Commission will likely take a look at, if it gets approved by the council next Tuesday, you would see the final rezoning on that site with those details worked out.
So the final zoning, when it comes back, may be a much different site plan, actually, based upon the access. That'd be a fair statement.
Surprisingly, the site plan is generally
not.
similar. Yeah.
Okay.
No, there will be some changes on France, so there'll be some changes along the street. But they are able to essentially incorporate the same building, just eliminating the residential access off 72nd in that courtyard area, that they have designed the parking ramp so residents can access off of France as well as the commercial.
So there wouldn't be any access off 72nd?
There would be an access, that
Well,
same
they coulda-
kind of U-shaped
Yeah.
access would be there, but it would only be drop-offs, visitor parking, and then the loading for the commercial use. That would still take place inside the building, but trucks would gain access off 72nd.
So residents would not be encouraged to go that direction at all? It wouldn't-
Correct. They
wouldn't
wouldn't
do
have
anything
anywhere to
for
park
them.
if they went in that way.
So Carrie, there's no closure of 72nd because there were some options with that. Is that gone?
That is gone. Yeah, that was the recommendation by the county, was to close off 72nd at the end, turn it into a cul-de-sac.
And do you know why Hennepin County changed or is approving? Was there any, conditions or any reasons?
They did have some conditions, designing it similar to the Byerly's across the street, maintaining an access between 7200 and the property to the south, 7250. So the access that they're showing into the site will also be required. The access from the property to the south will have access to that same entrance on France. So there has to be some
Okay.
internal movement back and forth
All
between
right.
those two sites.
And then my final question, I know you keep going back to that traffic study. So is it worth having that reviewed with these, are you doing that?
Yes, that was an additional condition of the county, was that the traffic consultant take a look at U-turns and the impact that has on France. So there is an update to the traffic study that's taking place right now.
Okay.
We're hoping to have that study concluded by the time the council reviews it next Tuesday.
Would it be conditioned upon that being acceptable or?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Should be an interesting meeting coming up sometime. Thank you. Chair and commission comments. I guess we're kind of starting into that. Does any commission comments on projects you're working on? Commissioner Carr.
One of the members from the public came and talked about a town hall concept. So I don't know if that's ever been considered by the Planning Commission. I know that we have a lot of kind of semi-town hall meetings when we have like the Grandview project on a smaller scale, but I don't know if we've ever solicited feedback from the public on ordinances, the need for ordinances, planning issues that are of interest to the community. So again, I look to members that have been here longer than I have, if that's ever been discussed as an issue, or you think that might be valuable?
I think Commissioner Schroeder will remember, we did some similar things when we went through review of ordinances and updating of ordinances, had a series of meetings as we talked about different aspects of the code. Public was invited to attend. I would say attendance varied a lot depending on the topic and, people that had particular interests in certain parts of the code. Those meetings were they were announced on the calendar, so they were viewed as public meetings. They were held actually in this room, and we would change the configuration of the room because we wanted it to be a more inclusive environment. So we had kind of a U-shaped table, usually, as I recall, and we all just sat intermingled as we had the conversations. And they were, by nature, they were limited. I mean, you knew what the topic was for the evening and what we were discussing, and we didn't allow free range, over everything that might be of a concern to you, that the Planning Commission has any control over. And I think they were effective when managed in that context. Comments?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Carrie, would there be anything, obviously it'd be a public meeting, is there anything that would say we couldn't do that, I guess? Obviously, something we should probably bring up with council and among others, but, I mean, is there any, I guess, any legalities or anything that would preclude that?
Yeah, we would just need to notice the public hearing anytime there's more than 5 of you together. But it's probably something that we would want to run by the city council. Those ordinance sessions did seem to work pretty well when we did that.
You know, you're going to have an opportunity to do it as you start looking at revising the plan.
You could almost say, hey, we're starting to gather input for the new comp plan. Maybe not exactly. Maybe not exactly that.
To me,
but
that would be an interesting and an appropriate way to do it, and you could gather data on information for you to take under advisement as you work on revising the plan on some specific topic areas. I mean, that would be a sensible, to me, way to, and a reasonable and a potentially very helpful way to gather data and information from the public.
Yeah, one other thing I was thinking, kind of along those lines, but it, was mainly for the commissioners. Obviously, it'd have to be a public format too. But do we take a walk around Southdale and some of those apartments that are going on and see what happened, see how people are using it, to kind of really see together how this is going on and good, bad, or ugly, what's happening in these, and maybe have a couple walking tours or something. I don't know if that's be quite the same thing, but it may be another way to do that as well. Both from our we would get a chance to do that and see it together, as well as any members of the public, and who knows, council for that matter. So engage the public. True. I know the mayor has his monthly walks. Is there a Southdale apartment walk or something? Whatever you want to call it at that point. So that was just something, or even walking the promenade and see what's been built, how it's connecting, those items like that.
Mr. Chair, just on the notion of the town hall meetings, I think if it's a good idea, it needs to happen in kind of correlated with our work plan definition, because we don't have the ability to take on anything. We're a busy commission meeting twice a month, and if we're to do this, we can't just take on new stuff as it comes to us in a town hall meeting. We actually program our work for the next year. So there's a time when this makes sense. And I think it's also important to recognize that our work plan is actually approved by the City Council. So we can't just take on anything. And we actually have things assigned to us by the City Council as well. And some of those things may actually come out of their town hall meetings.
Agreed, and that was, maybe that is something we amend our work plan. And one of the other things that Carrie had brought up is, I believe we're due for a meeting with the Richfield and Bloomington Planning Commissions sometime this year, maybe next fall. That probably should be in the work plan too. How that gets put together with that. So I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's our turn, and
I know it's been a few years.
It has. So I think, given the amount of development that the 3 cities have gone through here in the last couple of years, I think it would really be informative to find out what other cities are doing. So I'd really want to make sure that we get that done this year, probably in the fall, like you say.
Yeah. So these things, I guess maybe if next time's too early, or the week or sometime after that, bring back the 2015 work plan and just see if we're still all aligned on that. I know there's, just like last year, there's things that may come up and other things may need to drop off as we go through that. Just one other thing I was thinking, and kind of a message for the audience, whoever may be listening at this time. Right now, I believe there'll be 3 open positions for the Planning Commission come next year, or this year actually. So applications are now being accepted. Commissioner Staunton and Commissioner Scheer and Schroeder will be.
That's been
Commissioner Hobbs. Yeah, we interviewed for that in the summer, so there'll still be three open spots, which is a lot out of 9 of us. So that coming in. So I'd encourage anyone that is interested, please apply. And anyone here that knows somebody that's interested, of course, encourage them to apply. So along with that, since we really at the end of all this will have a lot of new members, one of the things I was also thinking, and this is something for you guys to think about, is how, is there orientation session just for the planning commission a little bit, kind of on, Roger, hopefully you could be there, kind of go over the quasi judicial roles, what power, we have, how does it work with the council, the other areas, and I've had a couple questions on, well, what do you look at in the staff report? What are the most pertinent areas? Items like that, and would like to invite some of the planning commission alumni back, if that's a possibility, and impart some of their wisdom upon us going forward too, if they have the time in there. So something to think about all these, and that probably wouldn't happen at least, well, definitely till we had the new members here. One thing that I know, there is a board and commission orientation meeting as they come on. Carrie, did that happen? Was that happen last year? It's like there's a couple 2-hour meetings for board and commission orientation. Has that been ongoing? Do you know?
That has been.
Okay.
Yeah, something that was relatively new, created in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Administration runs through.
I don't recall going through that, so I don't know if you guys had done that or not.
Didn't we have something like that? It was fairly simple.
So maybe not necessarily the same time, but we would have our own things to discuss. That's probably a little more general protocol. But.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about the schedule a bit. So the applications are due the end of this month?
I believe January 30th, right?
Right.
And interviews will follow shortly thereafter, so that takes place probably early February.
Yeah, the interviews I think there's 3 interview sessions set up, and the last, I believe, is February 12th.
Okay.
So it'll happen pretty quick there.
And then once the members are selected, they actually start, their first meeting will probably be in March, I'm guessing?
Probably.
So this means this orientation really needs to take place, and it probably should be planned to take place somewhere towards the end of February.
Well,
Right.
we'd want to make sure the new members are in there too, right?
Right, well, once they're selected, so, yeah. Once we know who they are.
I don't know if we could get it before they've even been here once, but something to consider, I guess.
Right.
I don't know, maybe
It
we
would
could,
be great if we could, because I think it's just,
maybe we could just throw out some potential
Sure.
dates and check on that. Do you have any comment on that, Carrie? Format or anything? I mean, we could do it here in theory, right? Just have a round table.
We could do it
Type
prior
discussion.
to a
Or even prior
planning
to a
commission
meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Say an hour before the meeting?
Yeah,
too?
I think it'd be a great idea.
I'm assuming the departing members will be here at least until those people are seated, right?
Yes, please.
If you would. Might be problems with quorums a few times, in other words, before that. So, with the comments I had, did anyone else? Oh, just one thing on the living streets piece. Right now, I don't know if folks, we're looking at probably in, I forget the exact dates, in the next month and a half, actually having some public input forums on those. So kind of similar to what we've done in other areas. I think we're looking at having 2 of those, one evening, one Saturday session for citizens to come and make comments, find out what it is, living streets. As you're probably well aware, we passed the sidewalk piece of that, I guess it's a couple months now, but this would be the full, more implementation for that, and how any new streets, any new, actually, if any private larger streets would be put in, these would be the guidelines to go for that. So kind of stay tuned for that. I'll give more information. We have the exact dates, but that'd be helpful if people have any questions, if they wanted to get to one of those. Any update on Valley View and Wooddale? Okay. Gotcha. Any other comments from the commission? Staff comments?
I do have one. I'd like to invite the commission to an upcoming work session that the City Council is going to have on February 17th. It's to talk about the city's review process for rezonings. We've got as you know, the 2-step process where they come in for preliminary and final. And it's a concern every time we've had this discussion in the past. We run into issues with the 60/120-day rule. Oftentimes, we are unable to process both preliminary and final within 120 days. So it's It's an ongoing concern, especially for the city attorney, in that we're going to run afoul of that. I'm typically, after preliminary, we have to get applicants to sign an extension, essentially, of the 120-day rule. Because in my time here, 8 years at Edina, we've one time brought a project through preliminary and final within 120 days. That was surprisingly the Lennar project, which was a pretty big project.
That's really surprising. I wouldn't have guessed that one.
That's the only one. Otherwise, they've all gone beyond 120 days. So we want to have that discussion again with the city council. How can we rectify that? Do we need to go to a two-step process? But we'd like to have that discussion again.
Is that timing? Is that city timing or is that state timing?
That's state.
State timing for that.
There's a statute, Minnesota statute, chapter
Gotcha.
1599.
So we can't change it, is what you're
Gives you
saying.
120 days max.
Gotcha.
Does that typically happen before the city council meeting? So it's a work session like around 5
Yes, it would
PM?
be 5 o'clock.
5 p.m.
Will you send out an email reminder on that?
I will do that.
And or an invite if you get the chance. Anyone else? Well, great. Well, thanks, everyone. Almost got done by 8:30.
Shall I move adjournment?
We would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Meeting's done.